not only in remembrance, but by the way we show up for each other. And we need to do that every single day, Chicago. With that, I would like to offer up a congratulations to Dr. Macklin Keene. Her recent appointment to be the next CEO of the Chicago Public Schools is a good day for our city. In our time working together, both in the mayor's office and in her capacity as the interim CEO, Dr. Keene has shown a deep commitment to our students and our educators. I look forward to continued collaboration with Dr. Keene as we work to build on the success of our sustainable community school model, as well as our continuous fight for our children to receive all of the resources that they deserve, particularly at a time in which we face the defunding of our public education system through the Trump administration. I also want to take a moment to thank Cindy Soto. Her service to the city was absolutely remarkable as we prepared to transition out of this particular role of Chief Homelessness Officer. She did complete the 5-year blueprint on homelessness as we explore how Chicago can better respond to housing instability and how we can align systems across city government to address the racial and health inequities that have limited access for people to housing and supportive services. We are grateful for her leadership and thankful for the blueprint that she has provided. As we review the recommendations, First Deputy Mayor of Health and Human Services, Jonah Anderson, will assume a dual appointment as Director of the Mayor's Office of Homelessness and will lead the implementation of the blueprint. Last week, justice was brought to members of our far south side communities when a federal judge unfroze funding for the Red Line Extension project, which had been stripped in an act of political retribution by the Trump administration. I do want to thank CTA for leading the legal effort to restore these funds, and I look forward to the continued partnership with them as we prepare to finally get this project underway. My administration will use every single tool that's available to me to win back every single dollar of federal funding that was withheld from Chicagoans. Since Trump took office, the city has participated in more than 60 legal actions challenging the unlawful activity of his administration, including 11 lawsuits and more than 35 amicus briefs in federal cases. Our administration won preliminary victories in each of the 8 cases through which we sought the restoration of federal dollars and other remedies for Chicago. All told, these actions have protected hundreds of millions of dollars in federal funding, which was promised to Chicago and all of our residents. Outside the courtroom, my administration has worked tirelessly to create a model for holding Trump's federal immigration agents accountable. Through our Protecting Chicago executive orders, the city of Chicago has presented a national model for what resistance, resilience, and protection can look like in this moment. We thank officials from cities like Boston and Los Angeles, Seattle, Portland, New York, and many other local municipalities right here in Illinois who have worked with my administration to protect the residents of their respective cities. Approximately 10% of the U.S. population is now under executive orders or local laws modeled on our response to the Trump administration's overreach. We have shown what we can accomplish as local leaders when we band together to fight against tyranny. This was evident on Saturday as thousands of people showed up to reaffirm that there are no kings in the United States of America. We are stronger when we come together to organize around the needs of working people and when we stand up to protect our shared humanity. I'm grateful to the leaders across the country who have embraced what it means to lead with conviction and moral clarity. As mayor, I will continue to fight for all of our residents against unconstitutional overreach. An assault on any of us is an assault on all of us. And finally, I do want to take a moment to address the large gathering that took place in Hyde Park last night. We all know that summertime Chi is approaching, and we all look forward to this incredible part of our city and the season that brings so many of us together. And I know more than anyone, every single resident of our city, including our young people, I know how much they want to enjoy the amazing things that this great city and this world-class city has to offer. But this cannot come at the expense of reckless and irresponsible behavior, and particularly behavior that endangers others. Parents and guardians, I need your assistance in making sure that we know where your children are at all times. Talk to your children about their plans. Help them identify a safe place where they can go if they get separated from their group, and of course have a safe route home. The safety and well-being of our young people is the responsibility of our entire city. My administration will continue to work with the Mayor's Youth Commission, My Chi, My Future, our community partners, and families to provide safe spaces and opportunities for our young people to thrive and reach their full potential. Just this past Saturday, we welcomed over 1,300 young people to Navy Pier for the annual Teen Bash, where they had the opportunity to listen to live music performances, play video games, and engage in arts and craft. We have seen the results of our record investments in our young people that enable them to experience the best part of who they are. These investments in our future are worthwhile, and our young people will always have an advocate in me. With that, I thank you all for your time, and I'm happy to answer any of your questions.
We'll do one question, one follow-up, starting with Jeff.
On the last day of Women's History Month, you're giving me the mic first. How you doing, Mayor Johnson?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Let's talk a little bit about sort of broadly about the gathering in Hyde Park. You've said repeatedly that the city has a curfew law, it's being enforced, and police are working, and obviously it's not just the police's responsibility to make sure that young people are safe. Proposals to enhance the city's curfew ordinance have been rattling around City Council. I know that Brian Hopkins has been working with your team on something that has been kicking around the Public Safety Committee. Are you and your administration closer to getting to yes on something that Alderman Hopkins and a couple dozen aldermen have indicated that they believe they need?
Well, look, what we need is to make sure that our young people have as many opportunities as they possibly can to experience the beauty of our city. And as I said in my remarks, those opportunities have to be organized and structured. That's why we're doing it. But it's not just on the government to do that. We know that there are many community-based organizations, faith-led organizations, business leaders that are creating safe spaces and opportunities for our young people. Look, I've been in constant conversation with our alders around ways in which we can structure activity that does not put people in danger, in particular our young people. As far as one of the iterations of the ordinance that my administration has been engaged with Alderman Hopkins around, of course, that work is still ongoing. The initial version of that, the SNAP curfew, as we said from the very beginning, there were some real clear concerns around the constitutionality around it. We are already paying record numbers in terms of taxpayer dollars to settle cases where abuse was applied. We can't go back down that route. In our attempt to create opportunity and accountability, we can't put ourselves in a predicament where we would be violating the Constitution of residents of the city of Chicago. We can build opportunity and accountability. That's the goal. And I need all of Chicago to help support this effort. It is not on politicians alone to figure out what to do with people's children. Now, I'm going to do everything that I can to make sure that my children have opportunity. And I know that there are a lot of parents who are doing the same, right? But we do have, some young people who have stepped outside of the parameters and the guidelines that we've established as a society. And it's incumbent upon all of us to redirect them in a way where it keeps them safe and it keeps our residents safe.
And a question, please, about one of your favorite topics, and I know it's one of mine, the Bears. Kevin Warren was on Pro Football Talk yesterday and talked about how the only viable site that they're focusing on in Cook County is the one in Arlington Heights, and specifically to the proposal that he and you put forward a couple of years ago to remake the Lakefront campus. He said there really wasn't an appetite at that point in time for that. Your acting CFO, Stephen Marr, told state lawmakers last month that one of the reasons that the city wanted more time was because of a lack of commitment from the team. I'm wondering, sir, if it's your intention to force the Bears and the state to come back to the table to reopen talks around the museum campus.
Well, look, it's the best location for the Bears. It's why they chose that location first. You know, look, what I've said repeatedly, and the Bears have said this, they want a partnership in Springfield. And that partnership cannot be confined and limited to a space outside the city of Chicago. It is still the best location. It's why there was an entire proposal that was centered around the city of Chicago. So clearly they had an appetite. Where things broke down was when the state of Illinois did not commit $850 million to that project. Look, it's the #1 tourist destination in the entire state of Illinois. The other location, which is my other favorite topic, are the Cubs, Wrigley Field. I mean, seriously, look at what the Ricketts have done to that entire section of the city of Chicago. People don't go up there just for Cubs games, right? They go out and hang out in the neighborhood. And creating that type of partnership with public and private, we're already seeing the fruit of that labor and that exchange. We're now one of the top tourist destinations in the state of Illinois. It's actually Wrigleyville. So now you have proof positive of how this partnership can work, not just for the sports, but for the entire community. And now you have this museum campus where people come to from all over the world. The infrastructure needs that are quite severe are very obvious. And unlocking the full financial potential of the museum campus is good for the taxpayers. Not to mention what's being proposed right now in Arlington Heights. I don't believe it is.
Hey, Mayor.
Hi.
Sarah Molina with CBS. Can you talk a little bit about the Chief Homelessness Officer position? You established that 2 years ago. It was funded by a grant for 3 years.
Yeah.
Why is it ending early? And can you go over the blueprint and if it will be affected with this position being eliminated?
So the blueprint will be made available. We're still fine-tuning a couple of points. And once that's ready, all of you will get a chance to see the incredible work that our Chief Homelessness Officer led. My administration never made a commitment to an amount of time for this particular office. And what we're excited about is that she obviously was able to do it in less than 3 years. But now we're moving towards implementation. Simply put, just because the position in the role that Cindy Soto is now transitioning, it doesn't mean that the work has ended. As I indicated in my remarks, there's an individual who would take on that responsibility for more implementation. And we're already seeing the results of the blueprint, right? We have a one shelter system that we've built. For the first time in over a decade, families don't they don't have to wait for shelter. Last year, I believe we committed $40 million to 7 shelters to move them towards, ADA accessibility, move them towards dignity. We're still building more non-congregate setting shelters and, of course, creating pathways for permanent affordable housing. So bear in mind that as we've been building this blueprint, flying the plane and building it at the same time, that work doesn't get interrupted or slowed or prevented because this particular assignment was completed early. As a former public school teacher, I think it's actually quite impressive to turn an assignment early.
Just to clarify and give you a chance to respond, the coalition that's behind that grant has said that they thought that this position was going to be encompassed by the city permanently.
The position
and
will
that the
still
final
continue to
payment
work.
is
As I
still-
said in my remarks earlier, let me just go back to them, okay? All right. Give me a second. First Deputy Mayor of Health and Human Services, Jonah Anderson, will assume a dual appointment as Director of the Mayor's Office of Homelessness. Hi.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
We are through the first quarter of 2026, although that seems a little bit crazy. Have you seen any indication that layoffs are coming in the coming months? And if you could give us an update on the city's financial condition.
Well, look, we're still moving and implementing government effectively. If you look at the particular revenue projections that we made, from my perspective, those projections are performing well. There are some that the City Council voted on that have not panned out the way that they had hoped, but it certainly is reflecting what we had initially predicted. We'll make sure that our budget director gives you a full analysis as we come to the conclusion of the first quarter to give a breakdown. Look, the goal is to ensure that we do not have to lay anyone off. I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure that the working people of this city are protected despite what City Council did to them.
Superintendent Larry Snelling is scheduled to attend Thursday's meeting of the Community Commission for Public Safety and Accountability to talk about CPD's interactions with federal immigration agents. What are you hoping that meeting will accomplish, since there's been so much controversy about how CPD acted during so-called Operation Midway Blitz and the run-up to those raids?
Yeah. Well, the hope is that there's reassurance that our police department is working within the parameters of the Welcoming City Ordinance. Look, if there are areas in which that is nebulous or too suspenseful, this gathering will help provide stronger clarity around the role that CPD plays based upon the Welcoming City Ordinance, while also providing the community with an opportunity to unveil or to highlight their experiences. What I'm confident in, though, is that this is an opportunity for us to strengthen our CPD, specifically as it relates to the engagement and the implementation of the Welcoming City Ordinance. If the city of Chicago in any way is coming up short of its responsibility and its obligation, it is well within the rights of working people of this city to challenge these systems and to ensure that they're living out their full creed.
Hi, Mayor.
Hi.
Another Bears question for you. So it appears the Park District is looking to renovate Soldier Field. I think I read $630 million in updates that they would like to do if the stadium would be used for different purposes if the Bears move on. What's your stance on that? Do you feel like that the city needs to wait and see what the team decides to do before investing that money and leading Soldier Field sort of to a different path?
Yeah, look, that's the focus is keeping the Bears in Chicago, right? That's my top priority. I've been a Bears fan for a very long time, but it's not just about having a winning team. It's about making sure that the city of Chicago wins, right? I mean, we're talking about thousands of construction jobs, professional services, and again, unlocking the top tourist destination in the entire state of Illinois. The potential there is just enormous. It's endless. It's prime real estate. It's why the Bears put forth a proposal just a few months after I was sworn in. That's how dedicated they were. We need a dedicated set of partners in Springfield to unlock the potential here. And then again, if you look at what's being essentially proposed outside of the city of Chicago, we're talking about giving tax breaks to billionaires at a time in which our school districts are underfunded. I just think it's counterintuitive. Plus, not to mention, it looks like the Bears are on the upward trajectory. Wouldn't it be nice to see a Bears Super Bowl right here in the city of Chicago under a dome stadium, where we can put thousands of people to work, and then when they're done celebrating, they can visit the entire museum campus.
Then the shooting last night off the Mag Mile, I think it was on Chicago, this young woman walking, it sounds like caught in crossfire, shot in the leg. I think there was a good Samaritan who helped her. Yeah. Just any comments to the public, just concern about safety?
Yeah, look, this is, as I said, public safety, community safety is my top priority, and you know the deadly use of weapons have caused a great deal of harm, and you know we're grateful, you know, by God's grace that this woman survived this tragedy. You know, and it's why we work so hard to remove guns off the streets of Chicago. We know that there is an uptick in terms of the way, and I don't know the circumstances around this particular incident, but we do know that there's been an uptick in that type of violence happening among strangers, driving past one another. We don't know all the circumstances there. But it's again, it's why we have to get guns off the streets of Chicago, quite frankly, guns off the streets in cities across this country. But again, our top priority is to make sure that we reduce these shooting incidents and we continue to drive violence down in the city of Chicago.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
This morning, LaShawn Ford and former Governor Pat Quinn launched a campaign for a millionaire amendment that would help fund property tax relief. If this is passed by the General Assembly and gets on the November ballot, and you know, and it's like the past referendums that were non-binding, if the people of Illinois say that they would like to see millionaires taxed for this, would that give you impetus to restart, maybe bring Chicago home? And would you support this amendment?
Well, look, I made it clear from the very beginning, we have to find more progressive revenue, whether it's a millionaire's tax, whether it's a digital ad tax, whether it's a fair tax. You know, government and leaders in this moment, we have to get off of our rear ends and get at it, right? The people of this state have spoken. Overwhelmingly have said that we have to fund our public education system, you know, at a time in which we're trying to find property tax relief for big corporations, everyday people who are suffering through the cost of living increase, and particularly at the hands and the expense of billionaires and big corporations that President Trump provided an enormous tax break to, that it's incumbent upon us in this moment to stand up and fight for working people. As far as that particular measure, my support for progressive revenue that's going to go towards housing, homelessness, education, property tax relief, to make life more affordable, I'm going to support those measures, hands down.
Okay. Last month, we saw the departure of Garen Gatewood, Manny Whitfield, and Kim Grigsby filed a lawsuit, all with the theme that there's retaliation from the mayor's office if people don't agree with them or if they do things that aren't in agreement with you. What do you say to that, what seems like a pattern?
Yeah, well, the pattern that we have around here is that we are fully engaged in standing up for working people. That's the pattern. If there's one thing that we are consistent about, is fighting to build safe and affordable communities. Look, when people have experiences in the workforce or in the workspace, they are well within their rights to file, you know, a grievance, and then that process unfolds. If there's something there that's substantiated, we address it. If it's unsubstantiated, we will still continue to work to make sure that our focus here is to ensure that the people of this city have safe and affordable communities. And having a workforce that ensures that actually manifests, that is my top priority. And look, whether it's in our public schools, our public libraries, any of our public institutions, if people are experiencing a workspace that is counter to what a healthy workspace should be, then they should file complaints. And then it's up to that process to either substantiate or to not.
Mayor Johnson?
Yes.
Sheridan Gorman. I don't know if you remember the name. She was an 18-year-old Loyola University student. She was shot, dead, killed, murdered by a suspect who is an illegal alien. And on Saturday, she was laid to rest. This weekend, you were at the exact moment that she was being laid to rest, rallying, screaming into a microphone for the rights of illegal aliens. Many people, hundreds of thousands, in fact, of real Chicagoans have contacted me and told me that they thought that was in incredibly poor taste, very crass, very
What's your question,
very
William?
crude, very rude, and very almost hateful. They actually saw that as hateful. Black and brown people,
What is the
by
question,
way.
William?
I'm sorry, I'm asking the question, if you don't mind.
I
Do you mind
do.
if I ask the question?
Not at all. Ask it. This is the opportunity.
I'll do my best to take the opportunity, if you don't mind. Black and brown people, by the way, told me that they found that you were dancing on her grave. They said literally that you were
What is
dancing.
the question, William?
That you were up and down just dancing, doing a big dance on
All right,
Sheridan
we'll go to the
Gorman's
next. We'll
grave.
go to the next person.
You see what I'm saying?
Ask the question, William.
So the question is, last week I asked you if you would apologize because your policies directly led to Sheridan's death, your policies. Would you take this opportunity? Last week you said no, or you didn't say anything, apparently. Would you like to take this opportunity to apologize to the parents of Sheridan Gorman? for
Here's
her
what I'll do.
death?
Thank you for that question. Here's what I'll do.
Okay.
Again, I will acknowledge the tragedy of the loss of life here. And, look,
Yeah.
burying a child is something that no parent should have to do, especially as someone who is a parent. The tragedy that occurred is one that, quite frankly, it challenges us to do better, to ensure that we are protecting people. And, as far as the call for no Keens, what I said, and I still stand by this, that we do have to protect working people. We do have to ensure that the immigrant community is not being assaulted. Violating people's constitutional rights, that doesn't make us safer. And we do have to put an end to these endless wars. Those were my exact words. And I will continue to stand by that, because if this was really about safety, if it really was about safety, the Trump administration would not have withdrawn over $800 million out of violence prevention. They would not have withdrawn 30% of the ATF's budget, which is designed to get illegal weapons off the streets of Chicago. If this was in streets across America, if this was really about safety, we would dig in and pass comprehensive immigration reform policy. So has the federal government failed in that regard? It certainly has. Do we continue to grieve and mourn for the lives of those who have been lost? Absolutely.
Well, doubling down on a non-apology to Sheridan
Do you have a
Gorman's
follow-up
family.
question?
I do have a follow-up
Okay.
question, and it's specifically to your answer to
Okay.
to my first question.
All right.
You mentioned your family, and I'm just wondering, because a lot of people, once again, black and brown, by the way, and a lot of black and brown people are really not that into you. I don't know if you've seen the comments, but specifically brown people, they're not particularly thrilled with you constantly referring to them as brown people and like you somehow own these people and they're part of your coalition. They're not really that into you.
What's your question?
Just so you know. But here's the thing. You mentioned your family, so I think it's fair. A lot of women in particular are being raped, robbed, murdered by illegal aliens, okay? I've asked you about this on multiple occasions. You don't answer the question or you get angry. If somebody in your family, okay, if somebody in your family was raped, robbed, or murdered by an illegal alien, would you rethink your policy of giving tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars to illegal aliens? Or would you rethink your policy of not turning over violent repeat offenders to ICE? Would you rethink
Thanks,
your
William.
policy of...
We'll move on
Well, I
here.
think I understand your question. I think you want to know.
These people-
Yeah, I
William, we got it. Thank you.
I think you want to know, like, how I engage with this on a very personal, intimate level. I understand your question, and anyone that is harmed by anyone, any act of violence, we have to hold those individuals accountable, regardless of their status. I know of people who have been harmed in the way in which you described by individuals that have documentation. It doesn't make the tragedy less because they're documented. Do you understand? And so what I'm saying is that we have to ensure.
William, please be quiet. Thanks.
William, if you're interested in a response, if you're going to interrupt me, then that's not a fair exchange. Okay? So thank you. So again, We have to make sure that we're doing, as government, everything in our power to protect people, period. And that's what I'm doing as mayor of the city of Chicago. Thank you. Pass that. Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, Amy Jacobson, WIND. So I have a question, a little bit of a follow-up. So Alderman Hayden said that Sheridan Gorman was startled in the wrong place at the wrong time. What is your response to her comment that she made?
Well, look, I can't speak for someone else's comment, right? I can only speak for myself. And as I've said before, that this is a tragedy. A young person was murdered, and a parent or parents and loved ones are laying to rest their loved one. And what I've also said repeatedly, that as much as this is a tragedy, I do not believe it is healthy to politicize it in a way to make people believe or think that somehow someone's political views should be cast at a time in which a family is grieving.
Yeah, but was Alderman wrong in making that comment?
I mean, you have to ask her how she feels about her comments. I'm just simply saying that to the Gorman family, we are still grieving and praying for them. This is a tragedy. They're burying their baby. And I think it's incumbent upon all of us to do everything in our power to ensure that no parent has to suffer through such a tragedy.
Okay, last question. We talked about the Bears. Let's talk about the Bulls. I know that you're a Bulls fan, but Jaden Ivey has been waived from the team. He had a rant on social media about the NBA celebrating Pride Month. He said it was unrighteous. Since then, his jersey is sold out, $20K after the announcement was made. This morning, Bulls player Patrick Williams stated, quote, "I stand with Jaden Ivey on everything he said. If they cut him, they might as well out me too." So should he have been let go by the Bulls for his comment? Doesn't he have a right to free speech?
Well, look, first of all, I believe all of our constitutional rights have to be protected. Now, there are obviously parameters around how the First Amendment is implemented, right? I mean, I taught 7th grade social studies in the Constitution. You just can't run into a theater and scream fire, right? So there are constitutional protections that we have to maintain with some parameters. I don't know the details around his comments. In fact, I've been concentrating on a few other things, so I'm not prepared to respond to the circumstances around that case because I'm just not familiar with it. Thank you. You're welcome.
Mayor, I know you addressed the
More
team.
sports?
Well, belated happy birthday, by the way.
Thank you.
With regard to the teen trend last night in Hyde Park, last Thursday it was a nice day, problems. Last night, fairly nice day until the storms came in, but problems. Is this something that Chicagoans are going to have to get used to, that whenever the weather gets nice, that teens are going to just gather and some of them are just going to misbehave?
Well, look, we've
Break
had
the law?
Well, we've had many nice days, and we don't have, as what you've described, as problems every time there's a nice day, right? That's not true. There are multiple nice days where you don't have that type of reckless behavior, and of course we're not going to get used to that. Look, because here's the thing: we have had these type of gatherings well before the incidents in which you've described. This has gone on for, quite frankly, for decades in this city. They have. I think the difference is now they're recorded, but they're not new. Now, what is new is our strategy, right? Where our police department, when they see these type of postings encouraging young people to congregate in a particular area in a way that could be detrimental to them, many of those gatherings get intercepted before they ever materialize. What I've said repeatedly is that we have to ensure that individuals that are responsible for these gatherings that lead towards someone being harmed or even worse, their life being lost, we have to hold them accountable. But we also have to make sure that we're providing more opportunities for young people. So if every gathering occurred based upon posting, then I would follow your logic, but it doesn't coincide with reality. And with that being said, we can still make sure that we hold people accountable while also giving people opportunity.
And for those kids, I mean, I hate to say, but it seems that you want to water down the behavior, and I can go back and quote you, but I mean, they're breaking the law when they're vandalizing, when they're causing problems downtown, are they not? Is that breaking the law? And what accountability, is there enough accountability, do you think, for that?
Okay, I want to just go back to my words here. I believe that I actually said that they were reckless and dangerous. So reckless and dangerous behavior can also be, as we all can draw very simple conclusions, anything that is reckless and dangerous could also be illegal, but it may not be, right? I mean, you could probably speak to some moments in your life, maybe as a preacher's kid, maybe not, where you may have done something reckless, but that was not illegal. Right? So I don't want to automatically assume that reckless and dangerous could be illegal. Otherwise, I believe all of us in this room then could be up for charges. Now, there are reckless and dangerous proclivities that could be illegal. And let me be very clear. The incident that you referred to a week ago, I believe there were 20 arrests. Is it 20 or 24?
24 citations for curfew, 8 arrests.
And 8 arrests, right? So that's accountability. So that's all I'm saying is that it's not just on policing though. At some point as a parent, I have to take responsibility for the direction of my own children. I can't just leave it up to the school. I can't just leave it up to institution. I can't just leave it up to the public space to create accountability. That's a responsibility for all of us. What I'm offering is what I'm able to do as mayor of the city of Chicago. So our police department has the authority to hold people accountable if their reckless and dangerous behavior is either illegal or it's just simply reckless and dangerous, and that those individuals need to be held accountable. But here's the last thing though. We arrested people last week, correct? And there were citations, correct? Did it stop young people from gathering the very next week? It didn't. This is all I'm saying, you all. If we're just simply saying accountability, then perhaps your conclusion could have some merit. That in and of itself won't preclude individuals from engaging in reckless and dangerous behavior. That's why it has to be both. It actually proves my case that if we just simply stick to this accountability mechanism, you would think that people being arrested and going to jail would be the deterrent. Since it's not for everyone, what else can we do as a collective, not just Mayor Johnson, but I'm talking about the entire city of Chicago, to ensure that young people have a place or spaces that they can go where they can feel safe, and in the event they show up and they behave irresponsibly, that we can hold them accountable. It's both and.
Good afternoon, and
Good afternoon, Mark.
belated advancing middle age.
It's really hard for you to give me a compliment, isn't it? Just come on. Let me just say this, you all. Literally, the next day, my AARP card showed up. I promise you, the very next day. So whomever is working over there, they're quite efficient. So Mark, perhaps on one of these Wednesdays, we can go somewhere and get a discount.
Okay. Also, happy accountability extracting, since the conservative press seems to think that we're falling down the job on that. But anyway, your anti-immigration law enforcement colleague, Pramila Jayapal, is calling for reparations going to those traumatized by federalized intervention. Federal law enforcement has also traumatized Black communities as collateral damage from riotous protesting pushback on immigration and naturalization law enforcement, although the likes of you and Governor J.B. Pritzker have called for peaceful protests in hindsight. So do Blacks get reparations from government, and those who stirred up the protesting hostilities, like you, Governor Pritzker, and Gerald Paul, in black middle-class communities like Broadview, Illinois.
We got it, Mark. Thank you.
We
got it.
I have to ask the question for him to properly answer it. Okay. So, in addition to repair for descendants of U.S. chattel slaves.
Thank you for being thorough, as always. Well, look, you obviously know my position on reparations for the formerly enslaved here in Chicago. And honestly, I do appreciate the consistent drumbeat around how we will socialize it. And I hope you do participate, and I'm asking all Chicagoans to participate in these public gatherings to be able to have that input so that it can actually direct policy. As far as reparations beyond the discussion we're having in Chicago, look, there's no secret around how black Chicagoans and Americans in particular have experienced law enforcement. And that includes federal agents, right? A black man was put into an illegal chokehold on the west side of Chicago. There's some real, that's quite disturbing. There were families who were stripped out of their homes in the middle of the night and had guns, slammed into their faces. I mean, these are very traumatic experiences and encounters. That's why I created this executive order to direct our police department to gather evidence in the event federal agents work outside of the confines of the Constitution so that we can create a pathway to accountability. So my support for black Americans receiving reparations still stands. And I do believe that we have to hold these federal ICE agents or federal agents, period, accountable when they create and cause harm and trauma.
Okay. And considering the chain of events since Thursday's public safety firings and human relations resignation, either illegally, unethical, or otherwise, that you chronically blame on Donald Trump, when will you own responsibility for the shortcomings of your sanctuary and defunded law enforcement policies? How close to home does the fallout from that have to get before you take the discontent from clergy, other civic leaders, and the general public seriously, including the Gorman girls' family?
Well, let me just, again, since you brought up Sheridan Gorman again, our prayers are with the family, and our prayers are with all families who've experienced trauma as well as violence, and particularly violence that has led to death. I don't own the rights of a specific policy. So when it comes to the Trust Act, that was passed by the state of Illinois. So there were people who voted for it. Same thing with the Welcoming City Ordinance. There were people who voted for it, right? That is a position that our state as well as our city has taken. President Trump even admits that 95% of the individuals who were detained in the city of Chicago were not the worst of the worst. Even the job that he is saying that he wants to do, he's doing poorly at it. Hear me, this is not about us not taking accountability. I take accountability every single day. I don't obfuscate. I don't, try to skirt around my responsibilities as the mayor of the city of Chicago. What I'm saying is that if we're gonna really drill down and get at the root of these problems in our country, then we have to make sure that we're all working together to get at it. Don't tell me that you're serious about safety while also, and I'm going to use your words, and the president is defunding public safety. Hear me, $800 million that he defunded from violence prevention. He cut the ATF budget. I gave police officers raises, and we have found better ways in which we can monitor a couple of things. One, police settlement, as well as overtime. So I'm being far more structurally sound to ensure that our police department is not, exacerbating a very strenuous budget, while the president of the United States of America is giving tax breaks to big corporations and the ultra-rich at the expense of community safety. He gave money to the ultra-rich and took dollars out of the ATF budget, which is designed to get illegal weapons off the streets in America. And so I'm going to continue to work with anyone who is willing to be a partner to ensure that we build safe and affordable communities across the city of Chicago. Thank you for both of your questions.
I pass this on to Mary Ann. It looks like you and the president better, James Brown, get on up and get on the scene like a sickness and addiction machine.
Can you make sure you clip that? Okay.
Mayor, can I get you to respond, please, to Alderman Hopkins? Curfew enforcement is one of the most effective tools. Preventing police from using this tool before 10 p.m. is foolish, short-sighted, and dangerous. He's saying that they're unable to use the curfew before 10 p.m. Can you respond to that?
Yeah, sure. Look, the curfew has been established and set. If this was just simply about making sure that people get in the house on time, then perhaps I would further engage. It's deeper than that. As I expressed in my previous response, that even with the implementation of the curfew, which did prove to be effective, the 10 p.m. curfew, that there were still individuals who were cited and arrested, and it did not prevent another gathering from happening.
That's like saying that someone that's murdered, that it doesn't prevent murder, or a politician who's been indicted, it doesn't prevent further politicians from being indicted. I mean, of course, I don't follow your logic. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, well, that's fine. I mean, maybe then I can put it this way. If jails and incarceration was the healthy response to bring crime down and to produce shootings and homicides, because that's the case that people made. Same thing with other forms of technology, that our life would be better materially, or we would be safer based upon this implementation. When it doesn't work, at what point do you have the responsibility to go back and revisit it? That's my logic. That if it's not working, if it's not effective, at what point do we begin to look a little bit deeper? So this is...
Could Hyde Park have been permitted?
Mary Ann, let's...
Okay,
let's
so thank you for your follow-up. I believe that the best way to prevent these gatherings from taking place is that, one, we create more opportunities for people, and that we also hold folks accountable. It's both and, it's not an either or.
Just one last one. February crime numbers have trended up. And March, we don't have them yet, but they are showing a similar trend. Are you concerned, as we head into the summer, that the numbers that you had seen previously were strong, but you're seeing a different trend with February and March?
Well, overall, violent crime is still down. Now, there are certain delineations within violent crime where it has not kept on pace with trends that we have seen prior. I think it's still too early to make a full determination. As I've said, one homicide, one shooting, one act of violence is one too many. The moment that we have had one or two is still disconcerting. And so I'm going to continue to use the full force of government to effectively administer the type of intervention and support that I believe the city of Chicago deserves. Here's what we do know still, that the safest cities in America have one thing in common, and that is that they invest in people. I believe that as long as we're taking a concerted effort to invest in education, transportation, healthcare, good paying jobs and housing, I believe that we can build the type of city that we all can be proud of.
Hi, Mayor. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
What is going to happen to the remainder of the Chicago Funders Together grant? You know, is the city not going to get the third part of the payment? Do you think you can repurpose it?
It already is. We're going to continue to implement the program. Just because this position completed their task, those resources will go towards implementation.
Okay, so to follow up with that, would that money, remainder of that money, go to Jonah's position or?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
Just towards implementation.
Okay, and where do you think the disconnect in expectations came from, where the coalition says their intent was always for Cindy's standalone position to be permanent?
First Deputy Mayor for Health and Human Services, Jonah Anderson, will assume the dual appointment as Director of the Mayor's Office of Homelessness. We still have the position.
Thanks.
Jonah Anderson.
They specifically named Chief Homelessness.
Thank you, Alice.
Okay. All right. Jonah Anderson will assume a dual appointment as Director of Mayor's Office of Homelessness. The title in and of itself doesn't determine whether or not the assignment will continue. We have, for the first time in over a decade, we don't have families waiting for shelter if they're unhoused. We put $40 million into 7 organizations that address this very issue, homelessness. We're building more non-congregant spaces so that families can live with dignity. This is the most comprehensive any administration has been around addressing homelessness. This is a big priority for me. I talked about my time as a public school teacher, where children came into my classrooms who did not have consistent housing, where they doubled up with relatives. I had an older brother who had an addiction, who died addicted and unhoused. This is not just simply policy points. This is personal for me. I'm never going to give up on this issue. The fact that Cindy Soto was able to do it with the expediency, that's proof positive of how serious we are. This effort doesn't end because Cindy Soto completed her assignment. In fact, we are going to incorporate it within the mayor's office so that it becomes the type of permanent position that ensures that this work never expires. Not until every single family has housing and that it's dignified. That's the goal, and we'll get it done. And I'm grateful for the partners believing in our administration that we would actually take on this promise. Because again, when you talk about the number of people who are insecure as it relates to housing, the formerly incarcerated, you have a big number of women who are incarcerated. It's why we incorporated this effort to address homelessness by creating a center for reentry that is dedicated just to women. We made that announcement a few months back. So this work doesn't end. I'm grateful, and I congratulate Cindy Soto for moving at the pace in which she did to develop this 5-year blueprint so that with the work that we've already done, we can continue it as we move forward. And I've given my word that I'm going to continue to address this issue while also fighting for progressive revenue so that we don't have to rely upon, a confined set of time through grant or through philanthropy. We need to make sure that we're fighting for permanent revenue so that this effort can continue. Thank you for that question.
Hey, Mayor.
Hey.
After a scan of this blueprint, I see mentions of federal funding challenges and calls for a dedicated revenue stream to enact parts of the plan. Can you be specific on what tax do you think would be most feasible in the next 5 years to serve as this dedicated stream?
Yeah, look, that's a great question. I think they came up with another colleague of yours. I think all of them have to be on the table. I don't think we should limit ourselves to one form of revenue. In fact, I believe that's what the problem is with our tax structure, because we talk about specific forms of revenue, i.e. property taxes. And guess what people do? They solely rely upon that tax overwhelmingly, of which 80% of property tax revenue is going towards paying down pension debt, right? So I think it's imperative that we find multiple streams of revenue so that we have more than enough, not just to deal with homelessness and housing, but we can deal with the other critical needs that people have.
And with the CPS CEO decided, can you update us on the CTA president timeline and whether you intend to appoint a permanent president for the NEDA configuration takes effect on June 1st? Is Nora Learson a finalist for that?
Well, look, I do appreciate the work that, the interim president has done, right? This has been a unique time. We finally secured a couple of things, the revenue that we need as a city through this bill that was passed and signed by the governor in Springfield. We won back our money from the federal government for the Red Line extension. My hope and my goal is to make sure that we have leadership in position in place who understands that transportation has to be accessible, has to be affordable, has to be reliable, and it has to be safe. All right, thank you all very much. And I'm sorry about the heat in here. I know it's a little bit warm.